Good morning. It's May 13th in Senate Judiciary. We're taking up an amendment proposed by Senator Harrison to Bill H 171. This bill was reported out yesterday by Senator Flores. We all have the amendment, and Senator Harrison, the floor is all yours to share the amendment.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for being here. I appreciate this extra meeting. The amendment, I have two suggestions. Obviously it's a good bill. We need the protocols to be determined, and I especially appreciate the language that says instills public trust in such investigations and resolves investigations in a timely manner to provide certainty to all parties involved. I think that's really helpful, and those items informed my suggestions. So I'll just go down the amendment. So the first item is to include a member of the Vermont Town and City Management Association. And so that would be a town manager. And the reason I'm suggesting this first is the amount of police officers that are municipal police officers. So it's roughly 550, which is almost half of all of the police officers in the state. So I think the chiefs of police also would be representative of the towns. The town manager normally is the supervisor of the chief, police chief. And also, I think it would be helpful to have a civilian on this board to round things out. And sometimes a civilian who is in the system, but not as in the system as the law enforcement folks, could provide a perspective from the public, which is one of the goals of this process. And I can, if you have more, if you want me to talk more about town managers, I can after this. But so the second one, when I first looked at this language yesterday, I was looking for something referencing the victims advocates, and I do realize that the Attorney General's office and the state attorneys do have embedded victims advocates. So I'm not proposing that victim advocates be added to that part of the process, but I am requesting that in section 5 or number 5, which is one of the charges to the group. So number 5 says, describe the process for prosecutorial assessment of the investigative materials, including dual independent assessments. And then I'm proposing to add and the role of victims advocates, so that entity or that group is included in the process, but is not in the group that's going to make the determination. So both of those, I believe, would enhance public trust, and that is why I'm proposing. Appreciate your consideration.
Thank you. I will say, regarding the second instance of amendment and the role of victim advocates, concerning that language, I would say that Senator Coleman, whom we all know, was supportive of that language, and it seems like the state's attorney's office was, I'll say, neutral. It doesn't particularly have an operational impact on it, but putting the language into section 5 or subdivision 5. Inserting and the role of victim advocates would be. So it seems like it would be fine And I do have some concerns about the first instance of amendment, but in the interest of time, I'll ask if there's any questions from the committee regarding that.
I definitely support the second instance of amendment. Based on what we heard from, I feel like I'm very neutral to the first.
So, Senator Harrison, when you say by inserting and the role of victims advocate, are you instructing the group to define what their role is? Because I'm pretty sure the victims advocacy knows what their role is. However, if it makes everyone feel better, then that's fine, but I don't have a big problem with that. But I do, and first, section 1, the Vermont Town and City Management Association. I'll be quite honest, I've never heard of that group. Okay.
Yeah.
So we tried to keep this as a finite group, those that would be actually involved in the actual investigation to determine whether or not there's an officer that stood above everybody else, broke the law, whatever else. So I'm just wondering, I think between the AGOs and the SAS, and the chiefs of police and Vermont Department of Public Safety, those are the entities that would be doing the initial investigation into this and coming up with a protocol. Because right now, as I said yesterday, we're a well-oiled machine, those agencies, but maybe just need to coordinate a little closer because they've got one investigation that took 15 months here, I guess, as of late, and that has an awful stress on it. But what expertise would the Vermont Town and City Management Association bring to this for investigation purposes that the Association of the Chiefs of Police would not?
So that's a really good question. So the association is basically the Association of Town Managers. And town managers, when there is a town manager, they normally are the supervisor of the chief of police. So then you do have the highest, the person responsible in the room, which I think would be helpful. Because the goal of this is to increase public confidence in the system. I think having someone who understands at least most of the police, and some town managers are actually are also law enforcement folks. But to have someone who understands the context of the municipality and the context of law enforcement. I was a manager, and they weren't shootings, luckily, but they were significant issues, and it took months for the investigation, and it went from our local barracks to a state attorney in another location, came back to our state attorney eventually, and so they are familiar with how those investigations and what happens after the investigations impact towns and cities.
So you had mentioned it's nice to have some civilians on the board, but we have the Attorney General's office, we have state attorneys. They're not law enforcement officials, they're civilians.
Okay, so I guess
By statute, I mean.
I guess I'm thinking, so this is a process that is known, but it's known by talking, basically. I mean, it's not written down, the process yet, as I understand it. That's one of the reasons that we're doing this is to have a written version of the process. And so I think it would be helpful to have someone in the room who is very familiar with government processes, local government processes.
Well, and once again, we tried to keep us in a very finite group because the fraternal order of police came in, they wanted to have someone on there too. So we said, no, the 4 entities that we have chosen to certainly have much knowledge in this particular, as how an investigation should move forward, how they should move forward in the best interest of the officer involved and the victims and whoever else. So I'm not sure what value I can go along with the second one as far as, and the role of it. I'm not sure what value the Vermont Town and City Management Association would bring to this particular investigative group to setting up a protocol for this.
Right, right. The protocol would need to be defined, obviously, mostly by the folks who are doing it already. But I think it would be helpful to have the person who receives the result of the protocol and has to explain it to their constituents and to select boards. I just think that perspective would be helpful in the room, and I couldn't think of a similar entity at a county level or a state level. A similar person with that perspective.
I've been in that role. I've been the guy that had to stand before the cameras in reference to an officer involved shooting. So you don't want to look at it as a sheriff or a town manager, whatever else. And I was involved in the very early stages. The Attorney General's office, the state's attorneys, they coordinated this from state police. Basically 99% of the time to go do the investigation. So I just attempted to stay informed as much as I could. And like I say, when that decision was made, way back when, I was there representing the office. I had no part in this whatsoever. The entities involved really handled it appropriately.
Right. All right. Well, I understand what you're saying. So then maybe I can withdraw that and.
Just go with this.
Yeah, and is there a way to just make a statement to this group? You know, that please just consider the whole picture when you're and I'm sure that's the intention of the group, is to consider the whole picture, but just solicit information from various folks, okay, so that it's comprehensive. Because I think you'll get more public support with that.
It's always nice to have public support, but I'm always speaking on my behalf.
No, I understand, but you have with experience from multiple roles.
So I mean, the way I'm interpreting this bill is, you know, the first part is that it is meant to be a pretty narrow and specific aspect of the investigation. So on the law enforcement side, gets into the specifics of, you know, literally who is collecting evidence, who's maintaining the chain of custody. If you're talking about a small town police department and the two officers are involved in a shooting, who's going to provide shift coverage, how do you coordinate those, for lack of a better phrase, boots on the ground, logistics. And then the second part of it with the attorneys, you know, the rules, the conflict rules can get pretty complicated. And I think, you know, they're trying to figure the protocols out for that. I absolutely think that if were to be a conversation about how should Vermont generally handle law enforcement or officer involved shootings, I think we would have a list of 20 people or in the group, and understandably so, because it's a very important topic. And there's a lot to it. I think given the narrow nature and intention of the bill, I would be hesitant of adding the town managers on here, especially without having gotten testimony from them as to whether they even want to be on it. And more than happy to add the second instance of amendment. I would be opposed to the first instance of amendment for the town managers. That's my first take.
Okay, well, we're in a rush, so first take is take. Yeah, so I'm fine to delete the first. Okay.
So if you don't have time before the floor, you can just offer the second.
Okay.
I got it.
Okay.
So just to clarify, the second portion of the amendment does not say that victims advocate should be on this, simply that you want this group
Exactly.
looking at the rule. Okay, that's.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, it's on.
Because that's when I learned more about this, and that it's the folks who are actually doing the investigation who are on its committee for the group.
Yeah, if you look at page 2, it's line 4, where it says describe the process for prosecutorial assessment of the investigative materials, including rule independent assessments and the role of victim advocate, which I don't know.
The call under the state's turn.
Yeah, and I think,
Review anyway, so.
yeah, and I do think it's important to mention it because that's what the public will be looking for.
I do too, and when we had taken this up, I actually wanted to expand the group to include some of those voices, and so I appreciate you getting that. Bringing that aspect to it without, and heard the same thing you just did about the narrowness of this group, so thank you.
Thank you. Okay,
Awesome.
thank you.
Yeah.
So can I just jump in here? So, I just amended your amendment. I'm gonna send it
Wonderful.
quick to editing and then I will send it out to everybody as well as, the secretary's office, but you'll have to do your,
Right.
you'll walk in and give your, okay.
Thank you very much. Okay,
Thanks.
thank you.
Todd, did you want to respond? If, okay. That's good.
Thank you.
You're welcome. In that case, so it's safe to say, well, I guess what's this lawful? Is everybody in favor of just doing? Are we all good with just doing, with supporting adding and the role of victim advocates?
Yeah.
And Senator Harrison is withdrawing the First Amendment, so we'll just have one instance of amendment. I can say that we spoke about it and by straw poll of, well, I'll talk to Senator Madison when he gets here, but presumably, yeah, well, I'll just describe it on the floor. Okay, we can go off live until 9.